As soon as I started working in design, I just loved it. I loved the way of working.
Today, I'm chatting with Steve Packham, Chief Design Officer at Macquarie Group.
And I approach literally every problem I ever have now with the design thinking toolkit.
Steve knows firsthand what it's like to face imposter syndrome and build something from nothing.
Imposter syndrome is real, right? And nearly everybody has that in different situations.
Steve took a design team of one, filled with big ideas, and grew it into a thriving group of over 40 designers. In our chat, he shares how a strong feedback culture, empathy, and play can unlock your team's true potential. All right. Maybe let's start with, do you want to give me, I guess, a bit of a background? Because you're not originally a designer.
Yeah, so I've been leading design teams for nearly 10 years now, always working in the financial services. I kind of secretly wanted to study graphic design. I used to do animations in Adobe Animate, Adobe Macromedia Flash, I think actually originally. I led the design team as just me and one other person, and that's now grown to be over 40 people.
Wow. Because that's like today's topic. We're talking about, I guess, creating a culture within design teams. Like my first question was like, how do you go into a design team and then build a culture if you're like inheriting a design team? But if you started with one, it's an easy place to start. So let's start there. Like, what's the important thing about building a strong culture within a design team?
Yeah, well, I think firstly, I think it's important to give this consideration and focus because building a culture in a team that's really good doesn't just happen. You need to give it a lot of deliberate focus, and then even after you've built that, you need to kind of do the constant maintenance to keep that going. I think it's particularly important for designers. I think being a designer can feel lonely at times, especially if you're working in the financial services. We're not the average personality type in the organization. So having like a home base for those designers to go to when they're not working on their everyday projects, it can be really a game changer for how the designers feel and also for how they perform.
Yeah, I agree. Talk me through that. Like, how segregated are you from the rest of the business, or do you integrate quite well across teams and everyone just has a home base to come back to so they have that safe place where they can be a designer?
Yeah, so we're definitely very integrated in the organization. Effectively, we work like internal consultants. So we've got a team of designers and they work on projects. They might be 2 weeks, they might be 2 years. And we have a big portfolio of different programs we're working on. And that's supporting all different parts of the organization. We're also supporting a number of enterprise-wide programs as well. So yeah, the day-to-day work is on the programs, and then we come together as a capability team as well to to see how we can learn, see how we can develop, and also we kind of often rotate the designers through the different programs as well and projects so that people aren't working completely siloed and solo.
Okay. So obviously creating a culture is a very deliberate thing. You started with one designer. Talk me through how you approached it. Like, was there a systematic approach that you took to go, all right, this is the goal. This is how I'm going to do it. Like, what was your approach?
Yeah, definitely. I think kind of the way I approach anything is to be quite reflective. So it was, periods of time, what's the next milestone, then reflecting on how well I've done and then how I can change it. And I kind of learned that from my own project work. I think, leading a design team when you haven't been a designer for very long was obviously quite intimidating. But there was kind of two things that I really lent on that helped me and that kind of gave me some confidence from my experience. So, firstly, as soon as I started working in design, and I came into design later, as we mentioned before, I just loved it. I loved the way of working, and I approach literally every problem I ever have now with the design thinking toolkit. So, the first thing I did when I was leading a design team is how can I leverage what I've learned from design thinking to help me to lead a design team? How do I, lead with empathy? I think that's the superpower and the foundation of how, I approach everything now. Treating everything like it's a prototype. So every ceremony that you've created within the team, any structure, anything at all that you've created with the team, like just recognizing that can change and that can develop, and not to be too intimidated, just to get something out there and get feedback from the world and then see how you continue to iterate on it. I learned, about collaboration through the design thinking process. How do you co-create as much as possible? And then kind of, I guess, lastly, just how do you communicate and simplify the message of anything that you're doing as a team? Like with design thinking, that's often our kind of define phase. How do we do that
Yep.
for the team as well? What's our strategy? What we're working towards? So that was the first thing, the design thinking toolkit. And then the second
Yep.
thing was utilizing what I'd learned as a facilitator. So again, early on in design, I was facilitating workshops, teaching people about the design thinking process. And through that, I learned to be a facilitator. And I think there's so many different tangential skills that you learn there that helps you to be a leader and helps you to build teams as well. So I think Andy Pillane has this quote that leadership is facilitation in slow motion. And I definitely resonate with that. And I definitely kind of lent into that during my time initially, and probably even today on a day-to-day basis of how I think about being a leader and how I think about leading the team.
Definitely. Can we circle back to the start of that? Because I think it's an important thing. Like, even becoming a leader, right? It's sometimes challenging, but you've moved into a space where you hadn't necessarily come from that background, moving into design. Did you have a bit of like imposter syndrome? It was like, who am I to build and lead a design team?
Yeah, definitely. I think imposter syndrome is real, right? And nearly everybody has that in different situations, which is a good thing to kind of recognize. I also think like a number of times I've also had people raise that with me. So sometimes I almost feel like I've got people have imposter syndrome on my behalf. But like from my experience of doing anything like new, you don't know how to do it when you first do it. And imposter syndrome really just means that someone else has believed in you more than you currently believe in yourself. And back to those that what I've learned from being a facilitator, I very quickly realized with facilitation, I didn't need to be the expert on the topic of the workshop. I needed to be an expert on the process and help guide people through that. So that's the same thing I embraced when I was leading the team. Like, I'm going to help my team to do the things that they need to do and help to shape our team. I'm by no means the absolute expert. I haven't got 20 years experience in this. I'm kind of new to this. And I think that kind of openness and transparency also helps with imposter syndrome. If you're not pretending to be anything, like you aren't really an imposter if you're completely transparent with, this is where I'm at and this is what I'm trying to do.
True.
So.
I can resonate. So like, I'm not a designer, right? I've got a design consultancy. My background's recruitment. I run businesses, but yet I have conversations with designers all day, every day, and that's what I do. I don't pretend to be a designer, but I know a lot about design, and I know how organizations use design. So I was like, yeah, I guess being open and honest about that is probably that key thing there. So you're not trying to fake it. People just understand. You obviously like kind of touched on quite a few different elements there when building that design team culture. I'd love to unpack it, like feedback. I think feedback is one of the most important things to help people on maybe their career journey, right? You can't learn something if you don't understand how to do it differently or how to do it better. Can you unpack how you embed that into your team to make it a part of the culture?
Oh yeah, 100%. I think culture is. I think the feedback is a really key pillar to culture, especially for design teams. For me, I think embracing feedback is a really important thing to do just for as a designer generally. And I think we kind of talk about that a lot with the work that we do on a day-to-day basis, but we're not always doing that when it comes to ourselves or drinking our own champagne or when we've got a team. So I've really that was the first thing that I've tried to do for myself, to get really good at giving feedback so that I could demonstrate that to other people and also kind of put that message out to the team and help to grow that too. I think if you've got a really good culture of feedback, then you're really you've really kind of set yourself up well to have a good team that's going to perpetually grow and learn. Feedback is a gift, right? That when you're doing a design or whether it's about a personal development point, someone giving you some feedback. For me personally, I've had feedback that if someone didn't give it to me, I never would have figured it out myself, right? Your blind spots are blind spots for a reason. So someone pushing past the awkwardness of giving feedback, and it often is quite awkward to give feedback, especially when it's constructive feedback, is it's super important and it's hard. So building a culture of it where actually feedback is an expectation, that kind of helps to push past that awkwardness. And I think it makes it normalizes it and I say makes it an expectation. Really early on as well, I read Radical Candor by Kim Scott, and I really resonated with that idea of giving really direct feedback that doesn't shy away or kind of couch it in other things. And it also comes from a place where you really genuinely care about somebody, because if you do care about somebody and you're not giving them feedback, you're not really setting them up for success, and you're not giving them the opportunity to benefit from the thing that you've perceived. I also thought with feedback, and with that book in particular that helped me was to be really specific with feedback. So obviously that's useful when you're giving constructive feedback so people can think about how they help to change. But the thing that was really a bit of an aha moment for me was to be really specific when you're giving positive feedback too as well. I think I was probably guilty of, oh, you're doing a great job, or this piece of work was great, but that really isn't that helpful. Being specific with what was good about it is the thing that helps you to kind of continue that and lean into that even more. So, and also just lastly, sorry, I was going to say, I actually think designers in the organization are the key people that should be champions for feedback. So if we're not doing it well and we're not enabling other people to do it, then I don't think anyone else will. So that's why it's especially important for us to do that.
Do you have I'm sometimes way too direct, right? I'll tell people what is good and what is not good, and people will perceive that in the way that they perceive that. Sometimes it's a little bit too harsh. Do you have a process that you follow? Even if you're giving direct feedback, do you use like a feedback sandwich, where it's a bit of positive, a bit of helpful feedback to help them critique something, and then end with a positive? Like, how do you manage it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think I personally don't really like the feedback sandwich. I think that can mask it to that point of Scott, and I think that won't be direct. Everybody has things that they're working on, and no one's perfect, and it's really hard to change. It's funny how we often expect people to change really quickly, but when we try and change ourselves, whether that's losing weight or trying to learn Spanish, we realize that's a multi-year event. So I think recognizing we're changing, and that's going to take a bit of time as well. So back to your point of you being too direct sometimes, I think creating an environment where people are able and feel like they're able to say that to you, or you giving people the psych safety to say, hey, if I ever feel like I'm being too direct, just please say so. I think it's more about creating that space and those moments. I think the other things you can do is, we're so busy all the time, it's sometimes hard to kind of interject and give that feedback. So I think it is really about creating the space and the time to do that. So in my monthly connect sessions with my direct reports, I have a section of that time which is to talk about behavioral shifts. What are they doing that they're working on already, or are there new ones? And that kind of opens up a nice way to have that feedback in both directions. And then also there's an activity that I've run a number of times with my team. I've done this throughout the years, which I found really helpful, which is like a peer feedback technique, which is you have a group of people in a workshop or in a room, and it operates a bit like a speed dating ceremony, where you have just one-on-one sessions where you've got 5 minutes to give feedback, 5 minutes to get feedback, and then you move on to the next person. And if you do the appropriate prep before, it can be super powerful. And just having it all in one go with a group of people can be good as well. People are normally a bit intimidated by it initially, but they come out of it kind of a bit renewed. You feel like you've been through something quite special after you've done that for an hour. But yeah, I think that's a great way to demonstrate to a team that this is important, and it's a great way to learn how to do that.
I like it. I've never done that with my team, so maybe it's something we give a try. Can I ask? This is probably like a question. I warrant feedback all the time from my team. If it's one-on-ones, which is the easiest way, I also do like maybe surveys, like personal surveys or emails, just to make sure that they can spend time to digest what I'm asking them and give critical feedback to myself. And it's not as confronting as maybe doing it face-to-face. But like if you've got a team member that you have given feedback several times and they just don't seem to be grasping what you're telling them and not maybe progressing, like how do you manage that as a situation?
Yeah, that's not an easy thing to deal with, definitely. I think it depends it depends where they are in the organization and how connected to you, how connected they are to you. So if that was somebody where you've also got another leader that may be managing them or interacts with them, I think it can be useful to talk to somebody else who's your peer to understand an angle that you might want to try to be able to help unstick them. One piece of that feedback is that feedback, right? That despite us talking about this, it doesn't seem like you're making progress. Let's talk about that. Like, am I not saying this right, or do you not agree with the feedback that I've previously given, or are you finding it, are you finding it hard to implement? Would it be useful to use some techniques or to read some books or watch some videos that I can recommend on it? So, I think my bias is always just to be as open and communicative as possible. And from that, you can you can then see where to build from. But every situation scenario is so difficult. So I mean, that's not always going to work in every instance. But I think at least that way, there, same with any relationship, right? This is true of your partner or your friend or your parents, or I think just being open and honest is the best approach. And at least you're not then going down two different paths where they're thinking, okay, well, they addressed this thing, but they're not talking about it anymore, or I've obviously nailed it. Or if you're just saying the same thing again and again, that's not resonating either. So yeah, also similarly, something I've learned from design, or by trying to implement change in any type of project or communicate anything, you often need to communicate things lots of different ways by lots of different people. So if they're just hearing this from you, they might not believe it, they might not see examples from it. So yeah, that's why I think it's good to go broader and see if there's other people you can work with as well. But you do have to be a little bit careful of that. You'd have to make sure that you're not interacting with their peer, as an example. Like, you wouldn't want it to feel like you're talking behind someone's back. But if there's somebody that's more senior that's interacting with them as well, or if this is a person that's like a skip report and you're working with your direct report on how to manage it, I think that can be a way to kind of think through the challenge. I mean, ultimately, as I said before, with any kind of problem and using design thinking, like, fall in love with the problem, not the solution, right? I think you can, the way that you're maybe asking them to navigate this is maybe not the right thing either. But I think the more curiosity that you bring to why they're still having this problem can help unpick that a little bit.
It was put very elegantly. I agree. I've had challenging staff in the past, and not challenging, like, culturally incredible, but they struggle to grasp feedback and develop their skill set. And like, my approach is pretty much exactly what you said, right? Like, I'll go, this is the feedback, this is what I think you need to improve, this is how. And that will be a one-on-one conversation. Then it might be, all right, maybe I'll break this down and I'll send you an email breaking down how to maybe resolve it. Might give them some literature to go and read by themselves, or some videos, or like, I'll try anything to help them on that journey. And then there's some people that just, I don't know, they're stuck in their ways, right? Which are challenging from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, it depends on how serious that is, or the capability. Like, this type of work isn't for everybody as well, right? So I mean, ultimately, sometimes people are on the wrong path. Sometimes people are in the wrong career. So not everybody will necessarily navigate through that and do a great job in the thing they currently do. But maybe that's the right path as well. I've always felt, myself being a leader and trying to help people, I really want the people in my team to do as well as they can do, and perform at their highest level, and to go on to do the things that are great. But that might not necessarily be in my team, might be in a different role, even it might be somewhere else. So yeah. I think that's, sometimes you do have to accept that as well, if you're still not continuing to make progress.
Definitely. And like, I've seen people perform poorly in a role and then go on to perform exceptionally well in another role. And it could just be the environment that they're given, the leadership that they're under. So there's no right or wrong. Like, never write people off, I guess. But let's go to the next point, culture of play. Talk me through this one. It's probably a little bit more fun. How do you break this down for me?
Yeah, play can be serious business. Yeah, I think building a culture of play is super important. I think this helps to make people bring their whole self to work. As designers, it's important that we're creative and that we're kind of leveraging the world around us to help solve problems. And I think it's hard to do that if you haven't created a culture of play. If you're in a state of fear, you're not going to do anything creative or impactful in this space. So I think it's really imperative to create that playful state, to be creative and to be innovative. People don't share wild ideas in an environment where they don't feel safe. Again, this goes back to things I learned as a facilitator, right? You can make an environment feel playful, and then people want to join in and they want to encourage other people, especially if you're trying to create collaboration, right? Because this isn't, a lot of the work that we're doing is not solo work where someone's an artist and they're on their own. This is a collaboration effort, and a co-creation effort. So you really need to channel those kind of moments of play. So I think it's good to bring a bit of levity to serious work. I mean, that helps to reduce stress. It can also increase bonding and kind of a sense of camaraderie amongst the team.
I agree. Like, it's hard to turn up as your, I guess, true self if you're concerned of being judged or you're worried about something. So it's like, creating a good atmosphere, it just makes it so much more lighthearted and enjoyable. So people just kind of come out of their shells, right? And I think, obviously learning that from facilitation, like, my background's sales. So like, if I want to open up a room, you have to lead with, I guess, a bit of openness from yourself and just creating a bit of atmosphere. Makes a world of difference.
a lot of that is as well, like when I talk about building a culture of players, it's co-creating an environment together that makes people feel like they can play. What it isn't meaning is to create something that's overly like structured fun. Everybody's been to like a work event or a workshop where it's kind of, it feels like a bit like awkward or a bit zany or a bit wacky. It's not that. It's about creating people where they safely feel like they can bring their ideas together. So you also need to, as a designer, also recognize that the way you might do that, your way that you might approach that, needs to be something that people can feel comfortable with too, as well. And it needs to recognize different personality types and introverts and extroverts. So it's not just about like doing fancy dress and being wacky. Like I think it's about, making everybody feel comfortable to contribute.
I agree. Like, you've got to take into consideration, like, if you've got a team like yourself of 40 people, there is so many different personality types there. So going for after work drinks, that's not going to be for everyone, right? You're going to have parents and they're going to want to go home to their kids rather than go to the pub for a drink. So it's like finding activities that are a lot more inclusive, that can bring the team together, even if it's just on-site events. It's like, how do you create something that everyone can get involved in? Mm-hmm. It's tricky.
Yep. I think the thing is, like, there's not one thing for anybody. So it's often, the answer is often multiple things.
Yeah, just keep trying. Something will work.
And back to that point of co-creation, right? Like, you as the leader don't have to be like, this is how we're going to come and play today. This is how we're going to like bring that creative self. You do it with each other, and you think of it as a prototype, and you continue to see what's working and what we can do to try and create that that sense of people being able to bring the true selves to work.
And that's what, like, I've always done with my teams. Is like, I don't come up with the ideas because I know what I would choose, but let's work as a team and all throw out ideas, and then the one that resonates the most with the most amount of people, then let's chase that. I think that'll be the fun. But I think this goes into the next point quite well, which is collaboration. Mm-hmm. How do you build a culture of collaboration between your team?
There's a few different things you can do. Firstly, the best thing you can do is to hire people that are aligned to that.
Helps.
Yeah, that helps. I think, especially in the design world, there's lots of people who are a bit kind of lone wolves. We've got lots of people who are used to being the only designer in a team, or they're used to doing lots of contracting work for short periods of time. So it can breed a certain type of person who is mainly focusing on their own work rather than a broader team. So yeah, I mean, it's probably true of lots of these things. Like, the first thing, hire the people that are aligned to that. I think once you've done that, you also need to, as a team, like, share the group wins rather than just individual wins, and kind of really just like where people see that you're putting the celebration and what good looks like, I think will help to highlight that it's about those team and broader wins rather than just about individual people doing things. Where possible on engagements, it's good to get multiple designers. I'd rather have 2 designers at 50% than 1 designer on 100%. So we can kind of get that overlap. It can also help to build out junior talent. And I also think the message that I normally give my team is that, the design capability is a small capability in this broader, larger organization, right? So when we go onto a project, the person that we're talking to, we might be the first designer that they've ever met in this organization. We might be the first designer they've ever worked with in their whole career. So there's a lot of pressure that we're actually representing each other. Like, our personal brand is all tied up to each other. So it's in all of our interests to all be showing up as best we can. Like, rising tide lifts all ships. So that's the kind of mentality I try and promote to try and encourage collaboration.
That's good. I won't go on this tangent, but that's a really important topic when it comes to communication styles, right? Like, if you're speaking to a stakeholder on that and you're the first designer that they've ever met, and you start throwing UX terms or design terms at them, and they're like, what is this? Probably not the best audience, right? Like, you've got to understand who you're talking to and then how to talk to them. Yeah, and especially if you are representing a wider group of design for the first time, I think it's very important.
And back to what we said before, if you're going into that conversation with the culture of play, I'm going to be really wacky and kind of getting that wrong. Yeah, that you have to meet people where they are. So yeah, that can often be something that can be a bit jarring.
Which, if you're in finance and you try and go into a meeting and be very creative and wacky, might not land. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we've learned a few lessons over the years.
As have I. Yeah. The next one, I absolutely love learning. We've got a huge culture of learning and development here. How do you foster this in your team?
Yeah, I mean, this is super important as well. I think being a good designer is about being curious. And if you're a very curious person, you're going to be into learning, and you're going to want to develop, and you're going to want to keep raising the bar and keep seeing what you can do to be more impactful in your role. I think the design field is constantly growing. So by constantly learning new things, you're never staying still. It's probably true of any role, but I think it's especially important for design roles. So having a culture of learning and having other people that are that want to learn and grow helps to kind of push and motivate each other. Like you're the average of everybody that you hang around. So I think by having other people that are constantly looking out for new things, that can really help. Also, when people go off, and there's lots of different ways people learn, right? They might go and read a book, or want to read blogs, or watch videos, or go formal training, or go to conferences. I think the key thing is when they go off and do those things, especially if they've been sponsored by us in an organization, that when they come back, they're sharing that with the broader team. So again, I think sharing is a really big part of learning if you're going to create that culture of learning within a team.
I agree. Like, do you do like brown bag sessions or just internal learning sessions where, like, if you got a group of designers that go off to a conference, what were the biggest key takeaways, and then presenting back on that? How do you manage that?
Yeah, there's a number of different ways that we do that, and it probably depends on the extent of the learning, or how much investment's been made in for that person to go on to do that activity. So we often do 10-minute learns. Just over lunchtime, just to kind of that's normally like a new concept or something that somebody's interested in. If somebody did a big conference, or they did learning over a longer period of time, we might do a whole hour where we come and people can teach them things about it. Other things we've done is actually do a bit more of a learning series, where we've had like a series of 2-hour workshops to teach them something new. That when we kind of first learned about systems thinking in our organization and tried to work out how we could utilize those concepts and those that toolkit, we created a bit more of a formal workshop based on the learning that the team had done.
Yeah, I think we do similar. We do maybe we've got a team of, let's say, 25, 30 designers. There's some incredible people in our team. So someone might be an absolute expert in AI and design. How can they package up an hour session that they can share with the team that's going to be valuable for everyone that's working out on site on different clients or on different projects? So it's like, you've got a team of, like, you've got 40 people. There's 40 potential amazing skill sets there that you can leverage and help develop the rest of your team. So it's like, I think it's a pretty good way of, I guess, hacking the learning side of things. You don't need to go out and get external speakers or send people on expensive courses. You've already got a lot of the skills inside. Like, you might have a UI designer that's exceptional, so get them to teach some of the product designers or UX designers how to do something small that's going to make their job a little bit easier. So
it isn't like a 10-minute learn. You're not going to convey everything that you yourself have learned. It's just about getting a hook, or getting somebody else interested, and also being a bit of a signal that, hey, this is something I'm interested in. Come and speak to me about it in the future if you'd like to. And a number of times in the team, we've had people who started out being passionate about something, did some training, did some sharing, and then now they're that person. That's their official role, is that. So it's a good part of how we've helped to create job crafting. Like our lead designer in accessibility, he wasn't appointed as that. He was just passionate about this, did lots of learning, did lots of sharing, and now that's the role. When we created that role formally, it was obviously going to go to him. So I think that the other people in the team seeing that also helps to add a bit of a motivator of, like, hey, this is what can come from learning about a topic that I'm interested in.
Yeah, I agree. And like, you going back to what you said originally, design is evolving always. And now's probably the biggest time with the introduction of AI into design. So it's like, you need to be, like, it doesn't matter what skill set you've got, you need to be constantly learning and working out what the next trend's going to be, because that's how you stay ahead of the game, and that's how you stay valuable as a designer to organizations or in your role or to your 100%. Team.
Yeah, and it's not like people are going away and learning accounting, and this is like something that is definitive, and how, like, these are the steps that you learn to create this new thing. Often this is still up in the air. Like, how are we going to utilize AI as designers? It could go in a million different ways, right? So it's useful for us all to go and learn different things and come back, because it's not paint by numbers anymore. It's there's different elements of it that are going to be important. So I'm always interested, as well as the different tangential things that people learn. It doesn't have to just be going and doing like a UX course, or just going to a conference about AI. There's lots of different facets to what we do. There's like storytelling, and there's bringing people on a journey, leadership, obviously. So there's different things that people can lean into. Even the other capabilities that we work with, if people want to learn about architecture or about agile, it's great to get your designers skilled up in those different areas because they're going to work better with those people.
Yeah, definitely. And even like if you're working in a large organization, go spend some time with the sales team or the marketing team or the finance team to understand what their challenges are, how they communicate. And it's just going to help round out your skill set from a communication style, which that's a big part of what designers do, right? They need to be able to communicate on different levels. Last point that you made was iteration. Talk me through this.
Yeah, I think building a culture of iterations is super important. You've had me talk about that a few times during today about not trying to get something perfect straight away, just kind of treating everything as a prototype. So I think overcoming perfectionism is one of the biggest things for design teams. I think that is a thing that uniquely impacts designers. And when I think about perfectionism, I mean when perfect is kind of getting in the way of us doing something better. I think the pursuit of perfect isn't necessarily a bad thing in and of itself. It's good for us to reach to things that are amazing. But when that idea of perfect is getting in the way of us being able to do our work or getting in the way of other things, then that's something we need to address. And I think the best way you can address that is just accepting iteration. Like a lot of the things that we do, we're often not sculpting a statue that's going to be in the town center for the next 200 years that we can't change. Like we're building digital products. We could alter them and change them and update them once a week, once a month. So I think recognizing that element of iteration, and that's down the product route or down the service route of how we're going to improve experiences. Like you've always got an ability to go back and enhance them and change them at a later stage. So I think one of the analogies I like to use for my team is that every single thing that we do is not building a Michelin star restaurant. Some of the things we're doing, people were perfectly happy with a McDonald's. And I think when we're looking at our, new engagements, it's like, is this one a Michelin star or is this a McDonald's? And I think when you see people in the team getting stressed or getting close to burnout, it's often because they're treating everything like it has to be a Michelin star. And that isn't the reality. Like when people are coming, we've got to try and deliver this thing in 2 weeks, but it needs to be perfect. It's like, if we're going to deliver it in 2 weeks, it's definitely not going to be like 10 out of 10. So for this big thing, so it's better to deliver a McDonald's that's really good than a Michelin star meal that's rubbish.
Yeah, I don't think there's ever something that's perfect, right? There's always going to be a different way of delivering the same thing. It could be one thing, but might be 10 different ways you could deliver it. But like once you get it out, then you can test it, you can iterate on it. So like you can see, how do customers like this? How is it helping someone internally? And then you can iterate, go, I've noticed that maybe there was a better way to do it. But like you're never going to find that if you're just trying to solve the problem all up front at once. So I think that just the mindset of iteration is way better, just getting things done. And I've seen so many people get stuck in perfectionism and just never get anything done.
Yeah, I think also getting it out there in the world is the way that you end up getting the thing that you want to get to in the end as well. Because if you get something out there quickly that users can see and stakeholders can see, and you're moving the ball down the field, people see that you're making progress and they see that you're achieving the thing you want to do, and they're going to give you more time, more investment, more money to actually then deliver the thing you get to. Whereas if you're in your ivory tower and never delivering anything, you won't get anything out there. So I think actually you need to do that to build momentum. And I think like as a leader of a team, I think is especially important as well. Like for me, I've always tried to think of what's the next hill that we're trying to get to as a team. Like what is the next achievable but big goal, and something that people can like see, you can point to, and you can share and talk to all your different stakeholders with. And then when you get there, you've been able to significantly move the dial, but also it was realistic and you're able to do it. And then you're looking at the next hill. So I think our role as leaders is to help navigate where we're trying to go and what that would look like in a kind of impressive milestone, but that is achievable, and then constantly look for the next thing. So that's kind of how I've been approaching it during my time of leading the team.
I agree. There is, I wanted to point out, maybe there is a bit of a fine line, right? You don't want to be a perfectionist, but you also just don't want to ship something for the sake of shipping it. Like you want to make sure that you're proud of what you're doing and you think it is going to align with the direction of the product or your stakeholder, right? Because if you're just shipping something and you haven't tested it properly, you haven't like actually reviewed the work that you're putting out, your stakeholder might lose faith in you or
Oh,
like
yeah.
you might put a product out that just the market doesn't want because you haven't gone through the actual steps to get there.
Yeah, 100%. I think not being perfect doesn't mean it's okay to be sloppy.
Yeah, very true.
Yeah.
So that's why you've got to get that balance right. Like you obviously built a team. You've been very successful in building that team. If I was going into an organization, they've got no design team, low maturity. How would
Mhm.
you get started as a design leader?
Yeah, I think the first thing I would say is it reinforces the importance of thinking about culture, and that you can't have good leadership if you haven't thought about building the environment for culture. So it is really important. It can seem intimidating when you're thinking of where you get started, but culture is really the result of a thousand small things, um, and small things matter. So if you're intimidated, I would say just start small and take it from there. Like it could just be putting somebody on a project for the first time that they is slightly beyond what they would normally do. Could be backing someone to go and do some learning somewhere. It could be taking some work off someone's plate who is struggling. It could just be a 5 minute conversation with somebody in their day. All of those things build up to that different culture. So I think it's constantly just reflecting on how the team's going and what next thing you can do to try and help influence that culture. And you might be the person championing it as the leader, but that will soon snowball and you'll start to see that being applied by everybody in the team. So it perpetuates, and after a while, you're not the only one having to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Like as a leader, that is a big part of the responsibility, right? Is setting the direction and getting everyone moving in that direction. But once you get it started, right, people start to just get it, well, enjoy it, right? That's what they're here for. But let's say if you're a designer in your organization, and how would you get it started? Like if you just went into an organization, you're a senior designer and you see there's maybe some gaps, how would you approach it from that side of things? Would you just speak to your one up and go, hey, I've noticed there's a gap here. How do we resolve it? Like what would your approach be from a more practitioner standpoint?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I guess that for me, there's probably two different environments I was thinking about there when you were saying that. One is going into an organization where it's already got designers and they're spread out across the organization and they're untethered, and your idea is to connect them together to form like a central design team. And the other one is where they haven't got any designers at all. So in that first instance of how you connect them and these kind of untethered designers, I think start small. So knock on open doors, see where there's maybe other designers that you can bring together, where the designers themselves are calling out for that team, and you think there's synergies, and bring that team together and then show the impact that you can have. In the other scenario where there isn't any design work, I think I would really focus on what the outcomes are that you can achieve. Again, I saw a quote somewhere recently where it's like nobody ever hired a designer to honor the legacy of design. So just by talking to people about the history of design is not the way to go, I don't think. For me personally, the best way that I've always continued to get success is just focusing on the outcome, and by getting the right people on the right engagements, and then normally just opening a crack. It might just be having 50% of a designer on for 3 weeks. Very quickly, once they're on the program, they suddenly want as many designers as we can give them. So that's what I've done time and time again. I think it's hard to prove on paper or in a presentation why people should invest heavily in design. I think it's all about building momentum, as we said before, getting the ball on the field, helping to push things forward, and that kind of bottoms up approach often is a good way to get people and get buyers for the design practice.
I agree. Do you ever think it's going to be a change where it's going to be easier to prove the value of design up front?
I think so many people, have gone a long time in their career of ever working with a designer or even really knowing what it is. So that is definitely an impact to people's understanding. I think, there's so many, the world is shifting so much in terms of how we're looking to approach problem solving, how large organizations are looking to work. I think that there's going to be, I think that opens up an opportunity for design for us to be able to really cement where we're at with our skill set and our capability. What people are needing in the future, given all of the changes we're seeing with technology and AI, I think we're perfectly suited to be able to do that. So I think the senior leaders who make those decisions I think hopefully we'll start to see how we're aligned to those opportunities. So I definitely am optimistic that will be the case. When it comes to implementing, AI, it's not just a technological problem. It's very much a people problem, and designers are people. So I think that definitely helps us. But there's still a long way to go with things that they don't understand. Yeah.
It's scary. Like no one knows the answer, but no one ever knows the answer. Just work with what you've got. Continue to try and learn and educate yourself, upskill, and the answers will appear at some point as long as you're moving in the right direction. So,
Yeah, people
but
tend to back success, right, and things that work. So I think it's just about focusing on the task at hand. And I'm much more. My approach has always been to make a lot of noise about design after the fact, and to kind of go a bit of stealth before.
And does that help you, I guess, build that trust with like stakeholders or teams or product owners? Like, if you've proven your worth, and then you kind of go, all right, now you see the value. What's next? How do we get involved earlier in this piece?
Yeah, 100%. And even more importantly, they hear that from other people as well. They hear that from the business people that were involved in the prior project. So you really start to, get a network of champions that are championing this across the organization.
Great. Steve, it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you today. I think building culture is such an important topic, and I think maybe some people don't give it as much focus as they probably should. But how can you expect a team that don't feel trusted and supported to be building great products for your customers or your internal users? Like that, it all starts internal, and that's how you obviously help externally. So once again, appreciate you jumping on today. If anyone wants to connect or reach out, is the best way just to connect with you on LinkedIn?
Yes, please. Yeah, I love all things design. I'm really passionate about culture. I'm really passionate about leadership. So please don't hesitate to get in contact if you want to talk to me about any of those things. I'd love to hear your own experiences and talk through any challenges you're trying to navigate.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Cool. Thanks so much, Joe.
Now, if you enjoyed today's episode, please make sure you hit subscribe. Also, leave us a comment and a like. It helps people like yourself find this video.